Welcome back to the Rain Race Podcast. I'm your host, GT Rain. Stu, we are officially at that time of year, aren't we? The vibes are good. The weather's good. The racing is picking up. It's Indy 500 month. I got my
Oh yeah, true.
my Indy 500 shirt on right now. But we got some sports car races to talk about before that. Rest of the month in the sports car racing world, at least in terms of races, is going to be pretty dead on the IMSA WEC front until the final weekend where we're back on the streets of Detroit. But for this weekend, we have a doubleheader to preview WEC 6 hours of Spa and the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship tire rack. What are they calling this race now? The Motul Sports Car. The Monterey Sports Car
Yeah,
Challenge. Is that what they're
yeah. I
calling?
think it's the Tire Rack Monterey Sports Car Challenge. I think that's right. I think that's right.
We'll get
It
it
used to
sometime.
be the Motul Course de Monterey, but
Right.
that changed at the last second. So now we're all confused.
The 2 hour and 40-minute race over in Laguna Seca.
Yes.
That's what we'll be calling it. That's pretty much all we have to discuss in this show. We didn't get a
Yeah.
whole lot of news with all the global news events going on this week and announcement of a new pope today. Unfortunately, the IMSA and WEC news landscapes have been pretty dull the past couple of weeks. But that's all right. Gives us a little bit of a shorter show, hopefully, for this one. And then, of course, we'll be back next week to recap.
That's a good one.
Recap everything. Yeah, I know. We'll say it while we have it. But if you do have any questions you want to ask us in this show, I'll try to get to those at the end of the episode. You got a live chat box, and we'll try to hit as many of those later on as we can. Let's start things off here. Let's talk about the 6 hours of Spa, shall we? Nice thing about moving this podcast over to a Thursday is we got some on-track action to discuss already. It's like we got more content to discuss than we usually would with our Tuesday time slot. We got 2 free practice sessions to review that took place earlier on today. Free practice 3 and qualifying tomorrow, and then the race on Saturday. Nice thing with the doubleheader weekend, even though the drivers are involved in a bit of a conflict, the fans will not be, because the IMSA race will be taking place on Sunday while the WEC is Saturday. So no worries about getting 2 streams pulled up at once or having to put one eye in each direction to try to follow both races at the same time, as I think happened during the Mo Sport Brazil race at the end of, or in the middle of last year. I believe the end of Brazil clashed with the start of Mo Sport, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that would have made sense.
So don't have to worry about that here. But like I said, a couple practice sessions to go over today, and also quite a bit of drama going on in those free practice sessions. Usually you wouldn't expect a whole lot to discuss there. But today we had 3 red flag sessions, all in the free practice 2 session. We didn't have to wait very long to get there, with the 51 Ferrari losing it on their outlap about 30 seconds into the session, going through a Rouge up Raidillon, cold tires, hits the wall on the exit of Raidillon. Very similar to what we saw back in 2023 in qualifying for the number 8 Toyota when Brendan Hartley was driving at the time. Lost it on cold tires. And that is a bit of a theme that we're seeing this weekend with Spa. We knew that that's an issue with this track. The drivers have had issues hit this track before. And certainly was no stranger to the action today in free practice too.
Is it a particularly chilly weekend in Spa? Do we know?
It's not too warm. I looked earlier today. I think the temperature was in the 60s Fahrenheit today. Do your conversion, because I don't know.
That's chilly enough.
Yeah, for a May, a early mid-May day. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty cool. But it's also just an issue at Spa in general. We haven't really seen the tire warmers be an issue for the most part at any other track. But you got to think with the landscape here, you are fully loading the car pretty much right out of the pit exit, going up that hill, and not ideal track conditions to go out there on ice cold tires. And we've seen that today. It wasn't just the 51 Ferrari though. We also had a very similar accident, at least believed to have been a similar accident, from the number 60 Iron Lynx Mercedes. Unfortunately, there's no video for most of these incidents today, as those free practice sessions 1 and 2 are not streamed anywhere. And then later on in the session, we had the 007 Aston Martin Valkyrie, Heart of Racing, Tom Gamble in the car at the time. Hurdy ran wide at Pouan, which is that fast sweeping left-hand turn 10. And it looked like the back of the car must have slipped away from him because he went into the wall backwards there and picked up quite a bit of damage there as well. Don't really know too much about each of those incidents apart from the 51, where we did get an onboard posted to the WEC social media channels this afternoon.
Yeah.
Which ignited a bit of controversy, I'll say, a bit of debate that's been going on for a couple of years now regarding the usage of tire warmers in the World Endurance Championship. This is something they used to have in the WEC, had gone away a couple of seasons ago now due to stated environmental reasons. They're not allowed to bring those ovens to the track with them anymore that are running. I think they were running diesel fuel.
Yeah, diesel generators. Yeah.
To keep those tires nice and toasty. As I said, we saw similar issues even back in 2023, which was the second race to not have the tire warmers. With I think it was the 50 Ferrari back then exiting the pits, lost it on the downhill in dry track conditions and DNF from the race right there. I thought it was rather notable that a couple of the people who were vocal on Instagram particularly about this were Philippe Albuquerque and Vincent Abril, both drivers. Of course, Albuquerque familiar with this type of car, racing it over in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. We're both pretty critical on the lack of tire warmers in the World Endurance Championship. And I thought it was especially interesting from Philippe coming over from IMSA, where we're not running tire warmers there either. But basically flat out said, this is too dangerous. We're going to risk injuring drivers here, all to save what? I mean, what is the actual environmental difference that not bringing these tire warmers to the track have? So I wanted to get some of your thoughts on that because I've been talking for a little bit here. Just sort of your 2 cents on the whole tire warmer deal. It really only seems to be an issue here at Spa, but one that's been popping up quite a bit in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I feel like this is a conversation that we have sort of every year at Spa is, the tire warmers. I mean, we had the crash last year. Are they needed are they needed in general, not even just at a track like this? Because I don't think you could just have them at Spa. I think this is something you'd have to implement across the calendar.
Yeah,
I'm still opposed to the tire warmers in general. I will acknowledge that this is maybe more of an IMSA way of thinking, as IMSA didn't have the tire warmers prior to this. They weren't taken away from the championship, so it's just been that way. And these cars, it's treacherous when they're going out, in IMSA, when they're coming out for a night stint at Road Atlanta. It's it's treacherous. They're tiptoeing around there for sure. But we don't hear about these you hear about cold tires being a factor, and wanting to avoid changing tires where it's possible. But it always seems to be a problem here at Spa, and it's hard to pinpoint why, because I mean we talked briefly on the temperature. It's obviously not piping hot, but it's also not ice cold either here. It is still a reasonable, spring sort of temperature. So what is the solution here? Is it tire warmers? Are there alternatives that could be explored to tire warmers? A question that I'd have, because I genuinely don't know, are all of these incidents on that first outlap out of the pits? Because is a solution to this just using the same pit road that they use in the Spa 24? It makes pit road very long, and it may be too tight for the hypercars because it does narrow up quite a bit, I think, when it goes down to the old pit row, the old pit lane, which is kind of just after turn 1.
Yeah.
which I can't remember the name of that corner. Was it just a hairpin? Is that turn one?
There's got to be a name for it. I'm blanking
Yeah,
too.
okay. But the hairpin, the tight hairpin turn one, like is that a potential solution if it's wide enough that that hypercars can safely navigate through there without risk. Now is that something that could be considered, because utilizing that other pit lane may help to eliminate a lot of these incidents that we're seeing take place pretty much right on the exit of pit road. So I don't know. In short, I'm not a huge fan of the tire warmers. Of course, if there is a legitimate driver safety concern, which we have seen this for a number of years now, there's probably a pretty solid argument in that court. If we think that that's the only way that we can go to make this a safer environment for the drivers, then I think you have to do it. But I would be against the tire blankets, and I also don't think you could just implement them for this round. I think this would probably have to be a calendar wide thing. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you think that you could implement it just for Spa, or is
In practice, yes, because you got to remember there was a lot of panic for this after Spa in 2023, and that's when we had the one-off exception at Le Mans in 2023.
True.
I think Jay Jones in the chat summed it up perfectly well as to why this is an issue at Spa more than anywhere else. As I said earlier, this is a track where you're very quickly loading and then unloading those tires. They're fresh out of the pit lane. And it's a lot more stress on those tires than it is at, say, a track like Bahrain or Qatar, where you get some lower speed, flat corners to get temperature in those tires first. I think the other concern with Spa, and your point to extending the pit lane might be a viable option to prevent this, is there's not really a second line going through Raidillon, isn't there?
Yeah.
When you have a car exiting the pits going 150 kph, basically crawling up the hill there, and then you have, even a GT3 car on warm tires would be flying past a prototype that's fresh out of the pits there, let alone a prototype that's on warm tires. The speed difference there is tremendous, and you do have to consider that that's not ideal. That's certainly not ideal. It's bordering dangerous to have a car going that slow, and you have cars that could be side by side of only a couple car lengths back, going twice as quick as you in that same part of the track. I think that's part of the argument there as well, but of course you could get rid of that entire argument by just extending the pit lane, like you said. I don't know. I'm sort of in agreement with you in a way where this only seems to be an issue at Spa right now. Maybe there's ways that we can improve that without bringing tire warmers back to all the tracks. Because don't get me wrong, I do like seeing the sort of strategy calls that it brings, where you don't get to slap on a fresh set of tires, exit the pits at the exact same temperature. I mean, not the exact same, but already up to near optimal temperature, than just having to deal with cold tires for the first few laps. I think that makes the race a little bit more interesting from a strategy standpoint alone. But certainly now that we have drivers who are starting to speak out about this, I think it's something that's going to be on their radar a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it does come up every year. It'll be interesting to see if it sticks around a little bit longer this year. And I mean, there's no plans for there to be any modifications on the schedule. But it's always something to keep an ear out for, I guess, as the season goes along. Maybe a track like Fuji. I can't really recall what the weather's generally like temperature wise in Fuji when they go. But maybe a track like that, it could creep up again. But
well, I don't know if the temperature really has that much of a play, to be honest. I mean, it might, but track temperature, you're probably only talking in the realm of maybe 10 degrees centigrade, if I had to guess. Because this time it's not like they're racing in winter. Don't get me wrong. We've seen snow at Spa before in the World Endurance Championship. Back in, I want to say 2018 in one of the free practice sessions, we had some snow on track. Not actually sticking to the surface, but falling nonetheless. But I don't think the swing between this track and even one later in the season like Fuji would be that dramatic. I just mostly think it's down to the characteristics of the track that we have here. Because, we're also racing at, well, I was trying to think of another track where we would have been racing in cooler conditions. I couldn't really think of one because we used to start in Sebring, which is by no definition cool. And I wouldn't say Qatar is either. So
no. Not Bahrain either. Bahrain is and you can't really compare like Le Mans to generally a bit of a much flatter track than Spa is.
Yeah, well, I was going to say Le Mans is also its own beast because it's mostly flat out straightaway. And if you can survive that first sector at Le Mans, you have a very, very long straightaway to get those tires up to temp. So it's not really a concern there. It wasn't a concern there last year when they didn't run the warmers.
Yeah, you're probably right that, it is just so much more. It's much more obvious at Spa because when you do come out of the pits, you're immediately at one of the most notorious corners on the entire calendar, on the coldest that your tires are going to be on a stint, and trying to just hang on to it. So that's going to cause more incidents. Even if they had tire warmers, we could still be seeing incidents take place there. But I don't know. It's something we got to keep monitoring, right? Because it's a couple years in a row now, or was it 2 years ago that this got brought up? Regardless, it's a couple times that it's happened, and we're not the decision makers. We just got to wait and see, I guess.
We just sit behind a screen and start yapping about it.
Yeah, our armchair drivers in this case, or armchair decision makers.
I got a wheel sitting right out of frame here. I can't pull it off because it's mounted on, but I was going to do that for show.
Oh.
By definition, yes, an armchair racer.
There we go.
Is what they go by. Couple other things I want to talk about with Spa. This will be likely a faster qualifying session that we see tomorrow this year than last year. Around half the track was resurfaced last year, right before the 24 hours of Spa. Leading up to the Formula One Grand Prix there. That's, of course, after the WEC race there that happened last May. Michelin bringing, again, the soft and medium tires here for the hypercars this year. Although we are expecting to see less tire wear on those soft and medium tires than last year, which was one of the talking points coming out of the race from last year. Potentially on course to see a new track record for the hypercar class in qualifying, maybe under 2 minutes in qualifying, although with what we've seen in practice so far, I don't think that's very likely. I think maybe mid to low 2 minute is what I'm expecting for pole tomorrow. The fastest time was set back in 2021 by Toyota with a 2 minute 747, a 2 minute flat, or 2 minutes 0.747, I should say. But we're seeing around the same ballpark right now as we were seeing back in 2021, lining up those practice times with the first two sessions we had seen today. So interested to see what the lap times look like, interested to see what the tire wear looks like as well. Maybe the soft tire is going to be more utilized here, depending on what that tire wear looks like during the race, and we'll have to see what happens. Also, just getting into some more of the results this year, or this week today. Let's shorten that up a bit. From what we saw over in free practice 2, it was Porsche leading the timesheets with the number 6 car leading the timesheets overall there across the first two sessions. It's actually the first time this year that the Porsche 963 has topped a timesheet in the FIA WEC, excluding the preseason prologue test, which is very surprising. I know we're only 3 races in, but if you look at how strong they were last year, it is a bit surprising that this is the first time Porsche's been on top of a session. Does look like they are rolling into this weekend with a lot more pace than they had at Imola, where I think you and I both made a point that they didn't really put any foot wrong in Imola with car number 6, but didn't find a way to get in a race-winning position just because of the lack of pace they had there. This weekend so far, things looking a bit more promising for them, and maybe they'll be able to echo what their sister program has seen over in IMSA.
Yeah, it's been one of the big surprises, I guess, so far this year has been Porsche, and not seeing them up at the top of the timing charts here in the WEC. But as you said, practice 2 was a good one for them. But again, we are just talking about practice as well. We did see some strong practice sessions from some of the other competitors. But the one thing that you can give Porsche is they were one of the few that managed to keep it clean. So they have that feather in their cap.
Yeah. And then if you jump down to the LMGT3 front, one of the standouts to me here is how poor, I know we're still talking about practice, but how poor the first 2 race-winning teams have done so far this weekend. In fact, across both sessions this morning, neither of those teams / manufacturers were able to break into the top 11. And TF Sport, winners over in Qatar, especially poor so far this weekend, with Charlie Eastwood setting the fastest time for that car. Still down in 15th in free practice 2 in the number 81 Corvette. And I think they were last and third to last in free practice 1 this morning. So not an ideal weekend for TF Sport so far. They'll be looking to turn things around. They actually did put down a relatively promising result at Imola with the Success Palace that race-winning car from Qatar was carrying. But this weekend seems to be off to a rocky start for them. But again, like you said a minute ago, keeping it clean so far on day 1, which I guess is a small win for everybody who's able to do that.
Yeah, it's we saw what that brought for them last round out, and yeah, keeping it clean, it can bring a lot of good things for you. One of the questions I was going to ask is we talked about the temperature in Spa, but we're not expected to have any rain, are we?
Don't think so. I checked the forecast earlier. I think it's sunny all the way through. So
okay, but it's 0% chance of showers. But it is still Spa. You know, sometimes systems in the mountains, in the hills can pop up. So
Sean in the chat's echoing what you say there. It is the Ardennes forest. So
yes, exactly. So maybe not completely in the clear, but it sounds like I got to be a pretty clear weekend.
You got to be pretty confident at 0%.
Yeah, that's true. The AccuWeather or whatever has to be pretty accurate for that to be. Yeah,
it's in the name, man.
Yeah, it's in the name. Oh, I like EA Sports. It's in the game.
Oh, come on. I think one of the last things I want to go over from Spa, of course, we do have new drivers in that Porsche Penske Motorsport pairing. We touched on this in a previous episode when they were announced, but in car 6, Pascal Wehrlein getting some seat time with that 963 before he joins the team at the 24 Hours of Le Mans this year. And then over in car number 5, Nico Muller, ex-Peugeot driver, getting his first on-track racing laps in the 963 as well. Right? He didn't do any one-offs in IMSA, did he?
Pascal?
No, Nico Muller. I couldn't remember if he had raced for Proton.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't believe so, but I don't believe so.
We'll take it. Either way, both of them getting some on-track time. It's the an addition to Porsche's typical 2-driver lineup for the 6-hour races this year. We've seen them do similar things before, though. Back when they had the 3 cars at Le Mans. I guess it was only 2015 they did that, right? Now that I think back at it. They brought that 3rd car over, similar to what Audi had used to do. So this very much is a pre-Le Mans sort of, I don't want to say shakedown session, because it is still very much a championship points-paying race. But this is the most similar track conditions that these teams, manufacturers are going to see this season to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Very high-speed track. This is a track where teams used to test out their low downforce setups. Of course, nowadays that's all quite a bit more locked down in terms of what they're actually able to change on the cars. But nice to see that it's still sort of continuing in that form as a bit of a Le Mans shakedown while it's acting as its third race of the championship.
And thank you to Ty for pointing out that
I knew
Mr. Muller did compete in the 85 JDC Miller Motorsports Porsche at Sebring.
I knew it was way too familiar.
Yep.
Should have known I was there.
You were there. Yeah, that's true. In the banana.
Yep. Jump over to predictions in a minute here, but I did touch on the fact that this is the precursor race to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It is the last on-track official running that these guys will get. Some teams will be doing some additional on-track testing at Spa later on in the month. But as race sessions go, this will be the last chance that we see these cars on track until the Le Mans test day in about a month's time now. And like I said, this generally is a pretty good precursor race of what we can expect there. I've got to tell you, I love the 6 Hours of Spa. It is my second favorite race on the calendar, of course, behind the obvious. You always see quite a bit of action here. We were talking after Imola how that's usually one of those tracks that doesn't necessarily offer as much on-track passing opportunities just around the nature of the track itself. This track is the complete opposite of that. We saw an incredible race here last year with a lot of action, a controversial finish that came down to how you want to read the rule book. That was hotly debated by Ferrari after the race last year, but overall, this has traditionally gone down as one of the more exciting WEC races on the schedule.
Great track, produces some great racing. What better way to spend a Saturday, right? What better way?
What better way to spend a Thursday than trying to get some predictions right for this event? I'll tell you what, you stole my prototype pick for Imola.
Yeah, I think you get to go first.
So I'm taking first dibs today.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, there's been one manufacturer / team that stood out to me. Admittedly, since we got the BOP tables that came out earlier in the week. But also because this is a track they've tested out extensively. It is their home race for the team. I'm talking about BMW Team WRT. And specifically, I'm going to go with car number 20 here. They've been knocking on the door in the World Endurance Championship for a few races now. They've been on a podium a few times and haven't been able to pull together a race victory yet. But third fastest in free practice 2 today. I think this is a race that's going to be pretty strong for them. And what a turnaround it would be for BMW to finally knock that race win off the board in the World Endurance Championship.
I like it. That's a good one. They have been performing well this year. Just seem to quietly go about their business today. See how qualifying goes for them tomorrow, and then of course ultimately the race on Saturday. But yeah, BMW. I like that BMW pick. That's a good one. For me, oh man, after going with the really safe pick last time out at Imola, I feel like it's time to go back to the riskier picks here. And we talked about this manufacturer last year coming into this race as looking like they were on for a good run, and it was an absolute disaster. The disasters have also carried on into the beginning of this season as well. But I think that the disasters end here for Cadillac. And I think Cadillac breaks through for their first WEC win. It was the number 38 that had the incident today, I believe, correct? I believe it was the 38.
I thought it was the 12.
Okay, well,
it was Bourdais, so it was the 12. Wait, no. I'm not right with
he's
that,
in the 38. He's in the 38.
Okay. Got it mixed up.
Okay. I am going to roll with the 12 Cadillac of Alex Lynn, Normanado, and Will Stevens to take the win. They showed solid pace, right behind the BMW in free practice 2. Um, didn't show incredible pace in free practice 1, but they look to be in the hunt. I think that Cadillac can finally put one together, and I apologize in advance. I know there's a bunch of Cadillac fans in the chat tonight, and you now know that Cadillac is not going to win on Saturday.
Fair enough.
The
I thought you
jinx.
were going a different direction there. I thought you were going to go
No.
with the 9X8 again.
No, I'm not that reckless. I've learned my lesson.
Here's what I'll
Too
tell
many
you.
picking Lamborghini for top 5s last year may have been peak reckless, but
Okay. Yeah.
I've
Well,
learned.
I know their free practice 2 results, or if you look at the combined practice results today, wouldn't necessarily show them as favorites, but I have quiet hope for Peugeot, as I did sort of
Yeah.
for Imola last race, where they did crack together a points finish, right? I think they were in the top
Yes.
10, I think.
I
I
don't
forget where they
remember.
finished there. Um, I think this is a race that we could see them, again, knock on the door of maybe a top 5,
Yeah.
which I think, was that my prediction at Imola? They would get a top 5, I think it was. So I don't know. That's where I thought you were going with that, and I was going to say I like that call, but obviously not. I do like the call of Cadillac, though. Jota was saying that they think Imola was probably going to be the worst result or the worst performance they had this season, being a track that they don't have a lot of experience with previously. So yeah, and they were strong here last year. Of course, one of the main storylines coming out of this race for Cadillac, that accident that we saw from Earl Bamber and the number 2 Ganassi Cadillac at the time. But they were quick until that point. So certainly, I guess you can't discount them for this weekend.
Yeah, there have been a lot of Cadillacs that have been obliterated here in previous years. I feel like they've paid their dues to the track, and the track owes them one. So, time to pay up, Spa.
Yeah, I even completely forgot myself about Ranger Van de Zandvoort back in 2023 with that one off in the number 3 car. Yeah.
Is it LMGT3 time?
Of course.
Oh, yeah. Take it away.
I was going to say, I was going to leave it up to you, but I'll take things over here.
Yeah.
Lexus has been looking pretty strong here. I already mentioned earlier how sort of the strong runners we've seen so far this year, particularly the Porsches and the Corvettes, don't really seem to be anywhere so far this weekend.
Yeah.
BMW is sort of up there a little bit. They're hanging around the middle. But I'm looking more at a first-time winner here for this season. Just looking at the free practice 2 results, we had Aston leading the session. We had Alexis in second, a Ferrari in third. And then down in 5th place, we had the 88 Mustang. So I'm going to keep it simple here. I'm going to go with Lexus. But I'm not going to go with the 87 that was in second place in practice. I'm going to go with car number 78, sister car. Again, we talked a couple times this season about how Lexus has really turned around from where they were at this point last year. Complete 180. And again, they're one of those manufacturers that's been quietly up there their first couple of races this year, haven't converted it yet, but have shown speed so far this weekend. So I'm going to go with the number 78 Lexus.
I like it. Lexus, you covered all the points. They've looked strong so far this season. Been a complete 180 from last year, and some strong initial pace this weekend. That's a good one. I am going to go with a car and a team that am fairly familiar with, that we pick a lot on the IMSA side of things, and that would be the Heart of Racing and the number 27 Aston Martin. They paced free practice 2 today. The Astons look like they both have some solid pace throughout the opening couple of practice sessions. Good driver lineup. Yeah, give me the 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to criticize you for taking maybe the easier one in LMGT3 after you
Oh my
decided to go a bit
goodness.
off. You decided to go a bit off track in the hypercar ranks and pick one that might not be the most obvious. I'll give you the 27 though. I think
I could have
looking at
picked Ferrari. Ferrari was really strong too. That one would have been
yeah,
really
yeah,
obvious for LMGT3.
yeah, like I said, I think you're looking at a first time winner here for this season, almost
Yeah.
certainly in that class. And Aston is certainly has been pretty strong so far this weekend. Of course, we're only looking at the first day of on track activity here,
Yeah.
so it's a blessing we even have that to look at all, since we were previously going off nothing. Um, but yeah, I think that's a pretty strong one.
A little bit surprising how poorly the McLarens looked, or pace that they showed in practice today. After they had a strong result here last year. They got a fourth place finish, and then one car failed to finish, but looked fairly strong here last year. Have shown some solid pace so far this season as well. Looks quite competitive, and they don't quite look like they're right up at the front of the field yet this weekend. But of course, still qualifying and the race, which is really what matters to come. So maybe worth keeping an eye on them and seeing how they develop over the weekend.
Yeah, and you made a point after Imola talking about sort of how forgettable Mercedes has been so far this season.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting that you said that because after that, I started noticing people who just didn't even realize that Mercedes are in the series this year,
yeah.
which is pretty interesting. I saw, I think one of them was related to a post by Le Mans Ultimate, the sim racing game for the World Endurance Championship, asking when they were going to be adding the Mercedes, and somebody replied they are only adding cars that are in the championship, and that was one of them. So
That could just
it's
be
been
internet
interesting to me. I've
internet
started
trolls.
noticing that ever since you brought it up.
I mean, you think about it, they're never on the camera. And
Well,
they're
except for today when they crashed, but
that's
even then it's not on camera because
that's
they weren't
true.
streaming it. I'm
That's
sure
true.
we'll get I'm sure we'll get it in a little feature piece either tomorrow or during the race Saturday.
Yeah, that's the little two minute clip up on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, but even this weekend I'm looking at where they were so far in free practice 2 and still not breaking into the top 10 yet. So still an uphill climb here for that Iron Lynx team. Third race, and only their third race with that Mercedes AMG GT3, but it's a car we know has potential. So it's just a matter of when they're actually going to be able to extract that.
Exactly. It'll come eventually, maybe. Anything else about Spa?
I don't think so. I guess the only other point I was going to make, and I don't usually talk about BOP that much because, to be honest with you, we've talked about it before. It's sort of a negative politics side of racing right now. But I did find it interesting that a point was made by one of the Toyota drivers, and I forget who it was, regarding the power output levels that Toyota is putting out this weekend, where that car is by and large the most underpowered hypercar in the class, only running at 480 kilowatts, underneath 200 or under 250 kmh. Now, when they get over 250, they get a pretty significant power boost, jumping up to, I think it was around 520, which would be, for all intents and purposes, I think the most powerful car after it hits that limit. Now, you got to
Is
remember
that isn't
Spa's
that
a
the
very
max? Is that the max?
it's
It
the
might be.
max by the baseline. Yes, I don't know if
Yeah.
you're allowed to exceed that by getting that
Okay.
additional bump after 250 or not. Um, but that is a pretty heavy swing. That's a 40 kilowatt swing, more or less. And I don't know what that converts to in horsepower, but it's
A
still
lot.
pretty significant. Um, and it was interesting to me how one of the drivers of that car, mentioned how noticeable that change is. And this is a very high speed track, of course, where the car is over 250 kilometers per hour for quite a bit of time as is. But that tells me that the Toyota is a pretty draggy car. One that would accelerate pretty quickly, but then once it gets over a certain speed threshold, needs a bit of a bump to get extra speed out of it. So I don't know. Just found it interesting how significant that gap is this race. The BOP pendulum has not swung very softly for this race. We've seen some pretty heavy changes in the hypercar class for this round. I'll have to see if it all pays off.
Yeah, that 40 kilowatts is about 53 horsepower. So it's a big boost.
It's like getting a pretty big shove in the back right when you hit 250.
Yeah, a bump draft without the bump.
Well, I think some of the drivers were describing it sort of akin to DRS, where at Spa that plays such a big factor in Formula One races.
Yeah,
going down the Kemmel Straight. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see sort of interesting things coming out of Toyota this weekend on the straightaways. I'd keep an eye on it, but I just wanted to bring it up because of how notable it was.
Yeah, definitely worth keeping an eye on. Is it time to go stateside?
Yeah, we're switching gears here. We're taking a Roger Penske last year, took, I don't know how long the flight is, but he was at Spa last year for the 6 hours on Saturday, and then the following day he was over in Laguna Seca for the IMSA race. So we're taking whatever plane Roger Penske was on across the pond and hopping over to California here.
Yeah, I guess you'd have maybe a little bit less than 24 hours for that, of time between the end of one to the start of the next to be able to go. So it's doable, I suppose.
And I don't presume Roger's flying coach. So.
Oh yeah, Roger's got his own jet for sure. So he's probably decked out in the Penske colors, Penske truck rental colors, not Porsche Penske. All right, let's talk about Laguna Seca. Of course, the Sunday race that we'll have going on this weekend, and there's as always, there's a few notable storylines to be watching for this weekend. Of course, we don't have any on-track action to look at yet, but first and foremost, we are not back to the full grid of all four IMSA classes. We will be missing the LMP2 class. But we do have the GTD Pro class that rejoins the grid. So their first race since Sebring, their first Sprint Cup race of the season after just the GTDs were in Long Beach. So good to see the Pro cars back and kind of resume the very intense battle that we've seen developing in that class this year. BMW, Corvette, Ford. It seems like pretty much any of the cars in that class have the pace to win. So gonna be really fun, I think, to watch the GTD Pro class this weekend. Worth keeping a close eye on them. And then in the GTP ranks, we're still talking about an undefeated Porsche team, an undefeated Porsche car for that matter. Winning the first now 3 rounds of the season, Daytona, Sebring, Long Beach, and looking to make it 4 in a row at Laguna Seca, and also looking to make it 4 in a row at Laguna Seca's BMW and the M Hybrid V8. Except instead of race finishes of finishing first, they are looking to have 4 straight qualifying results of first. Perhaps they would like to trade all of those in for a single race win at this point. But we'll see if how BMW's pace is around Laguna Seca. This hasn't been a track that's been very friendly to them in the past couple of years. When I was looking into it, I believe that they have a best finish of 5th around here. And that even is factoring in, I think, the first year of this of LMDH in the GTP class, there were only 9 cars on the grid in this round. So best finish of 5th, not a strong track, but we've seen how they have drastically turned things around in IMSA as well as in the WEC with their pace. So see if they can keep that rolling. You alluded to some track surface, changes that we saw at Spa. There have also been some track surface, I guess a new track surface put down fairly recently at Laguna Seca as well. We're coming up on almost 2 years. It's just under 2 years since the new surface was laid down here, but there's only been one IMSA race at the track with the new surface. It was done right after the IMSA race back in 2023. So this will be the series' second trip back there with this. Of course, Laguna Seca was well known previously to tear up tires. It was a real, tire strategy kind of race. Really managing the tires and make sure that that you didn't kill them early on in a stint. But last year with the new track surface, it seems to be a lot nicer on the tires. Very grippy, so we're seeing very quick lap times once again, and we'll see if that trend kind of keeps up, or if we, with a little bit more track wear, if we start to see some of those times come back down again. Actually, it's very interesting with these tracks. Both of them definitely have the potential for heavy fog at times. We see this almost every year at Laguna Seca, especially with the morning sessions, where morning sessions can be pretty drastically delayed due to fog and poor visibility. And we've also seen that play out, maybe not necessarily for the WEC that at least I can recall, but we have seen that be a factor for when Formula One comes to town at Spa. So two tracks that are also fairly prone to some fog. But the last, I guess, point that I wanted to touch on, and I just wanted to note here heading into Laguna Seca is I touched on them a moment ago in BMW and the 4 straight poles that they have, but I really do think that this is a big weekend for BMW, especially in IMSA and especially for RLL. There's been a lot of news that we've talked about a bit, I believe here, about the potential. Yeah, we did talk about it in the last show. The possibility of RLL not being the operator of that team into the future. We know the success that this team has had in qualifying. They just haven't been able to put it all together in a race format yet. And this could be a really big weekend for BMW to prove that, maybe break through for a big win, or at the very least, if they can have another strong result here, really establish themselves as championship threats here. So I think this is a really big weekend for BMW, and going to be worth keeping a very close eye on how they're doing throughout the weekend.
Yeah, I'll show my cards here and say they're definitely one of the teams I was looking at for my picks. Don't know if you're in the same boat or not, but I'll let you get first dibs on it. This historically in the GTP era has been a track that's been very Cadillac and Porsche heavy. They've both seen race wins here. Porsche has seen 3 podiums in the last 2 years here. So you'd have to consider, are they going to be able to continue that streak if the number 7 car can win again here? Like you said, it'd be 4 straight, and they're getting very close to that record of 5 set by the number 10 Cadillac back in 2017. So
yep,
I don't know. You can never count a manufacturer like that out. Cadillac, I think this is a prime weekend for both Whelen Engineering and Wayne Taylor Racing to turn things around. I think both of their seasons have been relatively quiet, to put it nicely, so far this season. And what a good chance for both, either one of them really, to turn it around and potentially pick up a race win here. And of course, as you said, elephant in the room is BMW. They've been so strong on 1 lap pace this year, but haven't been able to convert that into ultimate race pace. I think they've learned maybe every lesson they could have learned possibly so far this year. And hopefully they're able to turn things around if they have the pace to do so this weekend. Then then you're still looking at manufacturers like Acura and Aston Martin. And while I wouldn't expect Aston's going to be fighting for the race win this weekend, we're still early on with that program. Acura is another one of those manufacturers who hasn't shown a whole lot since Daytona this year. So maybe they're another one that's in the picture as well.
Yeah. I think you look at GTP, and I think there's four the four main manufacturers that we saw, competing the four full season, I guess, manufacturers. Aston Martin missed the Rolex, so we can't call them a true full season manufacturer. The four full season manufacturers reasonably could all come away with a victory here. I will say that, at least looking at the BOP table, Porsche took a big hit.
Yeah.
In terms of power for this. I believe it's also power below the 190 kilometer an hour threshold is what it's set to for this weekend. So that's stage 1 power. They took a pretty sizable hit there, and while Laguna Seca is a relatively quick track, very flowing, the Porsche could struggle a little bit out of corners compared to their competitors. So you want to tie that in with sort of the championship and how that looks in GTP. This could be a big opportunity for all of the other manufacturers to gain some of those points back that they lost to, or the ground that they lost to Porsche in the opening few rounds, because right now BMW's third in the championship with the 24, and they're 265 points back of the leading number 7. That is essentially a full race worth of points.
Which is crazy, because
there.
we're only 3 races in.
Yeah. It's wild. And then, even if you look at, Cadillac 290, Acura in the 60, or 308 points back. These are margins that we hear at the end of the season.
Yeah,
maybe. And even
exactly what I was going to say.
It's not like this after 3 rounds. So, if Porsche does stumble this weekend a little bit, or they don't quite have the pace, then that would be the opportunity that all of the manufacturers need to capitalize on if they're, gonna start to claw that deficit back.
Yep, exactly what I was going to say. If this is a weekend where Porsche does struggle, you got to maximize where you can, because they're certainly going to bounce back later on this season, and they're going to be gunning hard for that championship, as they already have been. So any opportunity at all to reclaim points this weekend. I think those other big manufacturers, the full season, as we want to put them in quotes, manufacturers, are all going to be gunning for that top spot this weekend.
Yeah, and all with a realistic shot. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun one in GTP. I think there's I think it's a bit of a wild card entering this week. And you can argue that every race is a bit of a wild card, but I think it would be difficult to pin down a favorite heading into the weekend.
Sure.
Of course, is it time for us to try and pin down who we think our favorites are to win?
Yeah, I didn't know if you had anything else to discuss for any of the other classes, but if you're all set,
I think maybe we can touch on the other classes briefly when we make our picks.
Sure. Well, I said I was going to give you liberty of picking first here, so.
All right, it's an easy one for me. Cadillac has been strong here the past couple of seasons, and I think they will continue to be strong. The BOP looked fine for them. And I think that the 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac is going to pull out the win that many were thinking they were going to do last year. If you'll recall, heading into this race last year, the 31 was the car that had won the first 3 poles of the season, and Pipo Derani. So they looked unstoppable, and I don't recall it being a very strong race for them. So I do think that the 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac pulls through for the first non-Porsche win of the year in GTP.
All right. I've heard that one before.
Yeah, if we're looking at last, we've had a 31 pick.
I've stopped on purpose. Yeah. If we look at last year's trends, I guess as a point of reference, I guess we can exclude the 24 right off the bat. Yeah, because they've gotten the first 3 poles as well. Do I go with the BMW for both championships?
That'd be fun. I went with Cadillac for both, so
Um,
What could go wrong, right?
I was really thinking Cadillac as well, but I'm gonna go with one of the Wayne Taylor Racing entries. The question is which
Okay.
one. I'm gonna go with the 40 for this one.
I like it.
Um, I might have picked them already a couple times this year. Did I pick them for last race? I might have picked them
Maybe.
for Long Beach. I can't remember, but um, as you said, I'm going to echo a lot of the same points. This is a track that Cadillac has historically been strong at. And Wayne Taylor Racing is one of those teams that absolutely needs to claw some points back, not just on the leading Porsches, but also on BMW as well. They've been sort of on a streak for the last 2 years now. And any opportunity for them to claw back some of those points, I think, is desperately needed by that team. Give me the number 40 for this weekend.
I like it. I like it. I mean, you covered it with we both covered it with Cadillac being strong here in previous years. So I like the choice. I like the choice.
And we both picked Ferrari for last race as well. So for
There we
I
go.
was thinking Imola.
Oh yes. Okay.
So
Okay.
we'll keep
See
it
how that
simple
works
there.
out for us. It worked out well for Ferrari at Imola. So
Yeah.
there we go. Anything else on GTP at Laguna Seca to touch on? I think we kind of covered it all.
Um. Yeah, I think we hit most of the points there. Again, I think this is, as we said, this is going to be probably a strong race between those four full season, if we want to claim it that again, manufacturers. I am curious to see how Aston holds up here. They had a
Yeah.
surprisingly decent result at Long Beach, just by keeping the car clean. That's not necessarily going to be as much of a factor here. But this is going to be the first 2 hour, 40-minute race for that Valkyrie over in IMSA. So nice to see what it'll be able to do in the traditional, most common IMSA race length. And we'll see where they're able to finish there.
Exactly. All right, let's look at GTD Pro next. The GTD Pro class, they returned to the WeatherTech Championship grid after being absent at Long Beach. Although a couple of them did take part. Notably, Rexy did win in the GTD class. And we look at Rexy. Rexy are the defending winners of this race from last year. Porsches have been historic, and in particular, the 911 GT3R, the Type 992, since that has come into play in the championship. They won in GTD Pro last year. They won in GTD the year before that. So it's been a strong car at this track. We can probably reasonably expect that that Rexy is going to be a formidable contender as well. But yeah, I think the main storyline in GTD Pro is just the battle between that we've seen unfolding between kind of the manufacturers. Corvette, BMW, Ford, Lexus is in there. FAF has shown some strong pace. At the Rolex, they were right in there before they found issues, and then at Sebring as well, they had a torque sensor issue, I believe it was, in the first opening minutes of the race. So I think there's a lot of good cars to choose from here in GTD Pro, and I will give you the first selection in the Pro class.
All right, I'll keep it easy then. You were just singing some praise over to FAF. I'm going to go with them. Runner up here last year. Might have taken it from you. Runner up here last year, though. Of course, they were running a McLaren here last year. They are running a special Motul livery again for this race.
Yep.
And haven't had a whole lot to show with that Lamborghini yet this season. As you said, they were very strong at Daytona. I might have picked them for Daytona. I can't remember. And then, of course, at Sebring, just got off to a really poor start, so didn't really have a chance there. But at a more traditional sprint race by IMSA, well, I don't know if I want to call it a sprint race, a traditional race length here, I just go with a team that's due up a race win.
All right. Yeah, you definitely did steal that, but that's okay because I can
Don't let
pivot
me pick
quickly here.
first.
There's there's plenty of other. It's a coin toss in GTD Pro, right? But the
Sure.
coin is going to land facing up with a prancing horse that's not, no, Lamborghini's a bull, with a prancing horse that's not a Ferrari. It's a Ford, and the Ford Mustang. I guess that's not a prancing horse. That's like a running horse. I think is a prance when it's reared back.
We're not doing this, man.
I
Look,
don't
we're
know.
not.
Uh,
I
yeah,
watched the
yeah.
Kentucky Derby over the weekend. That's about as much as my knowledge goes.
Okay, it's still a horse. It's still a horse. We're keeping with the horse theme. It's going to be the number 64 Ford Multimatic Motorsports Mustang. Mike Rockenfeller, Seb Brio. Sam in the chat says galloping, perhaps. But it is going to be the Ford Mustang that takes the win here. They've shown strong pace in all 3 rounds. Of course, they picked up the first and third place finish at the Rolex, kind of taking advantage of their competitors beating on one another in the closing hours. But I like Ford here to take the win at Laguna.
Did you specify which one? I couldn't
Yeah,
remember.
the 64.
Okay.
Rocky and Seb Prio.
Yeah, of course. Team that won at Daytona this year, and eyeing for their first. I guess this would be their first shorter race victory in IMSA, wouldn't it be?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I do believe so.
So.
Yeah, because the Mustang was, or sorry, the Rolex was their first win in IMSA period.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
All right.
It's a coin toss, like you said. So I would have liked any of the picks you had, honestly.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong group. Even AO Racing. There's the Corvettes, Vassar Sullivan, Paul Miller Racing, Dragon Speed. We're all talking about gold and platinum drivers in these lineups. So yeah, it's a toss up. One that is definitely a big toss up and could go many different ways is GTD. We saw a fun battle unfold at Long Beach, the first sprint round for the GTD class. And ultimately, it was a GTD Pro car that was making a one-off appearance that took the win there. But also another healthy grid size here at Laguna Seca for GTD. There's going to be 15 entries on the grid. An interesting addition is the 023 Triarci Ferrari that's had previously just committed for the Endurance Cup rounds and is making a Sprint Cup round. So good to see, an extra car be brought to the grid. And then, of course, we do also have the first race together for Robert Wickens and Alec Udell, who will be the Sprint Cup pairing for that car for the remainder of the sprint round races, with Tommy Milner returning to Corvette duties, or Pratt Miller Corvette duties. So yeah, a strong grid here once again in GTD, but per usual, there are a couple of regular I guess suspects that you could expect to see at the front. This weekend, I think you got first pick in GTD Pro, so I'm going to take first pick in GTD, and I am going to go with the number 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus here. Are we stealing?
No, you didn't steal it. I just could have seen it. I was
Okay.
gonna joke before you made it. I said which Lexus, but
okay. Yeah, I thought about taking the 14 in Pro, but then you see the number 12 sitting there in GTD, and it's such a strong driver lineup. Jack Hawksworth and Parker Thompson. The Lexus has been solid here at Laguna Seca, to my recollection. I don't have results off the top of my head, but it has been solid here, and yeah, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult team to go against in the GTD class. Just super consistent, always competitive. Vassar Sullivan Lexus.
okay. You've been doing old reliable for the GT picks here, so I'll I'll go with it.
playing it safe, right?
That's
Except in that hypercar pick, maybe a little bit of a roll of the dice.
yeah. I slighted BMW a bit for my GTP pick, even though I do think they're going to be pretty strong here. But I'm going to go with them in GTD. I'm going to go with the 96 Turner Motorsport BMW. Another one of those lineups that's always a contender, always a lineup you want to look out for. Robbie Foley and Patrick Gallagher in that M4 GT3 Evo. Don't really have a whole lot else to say about it, apart from the fact that they're just one of those lineups that's always in the mix.
And they were strong here last year. Turner Motorsports finished second here last year.
So there we
Your
go. I'm just going with P2 in both GT classes from last year.
There you go. There you go. They had they actually had that they had the number 557 in last year's race to commemorate. Was it breaking the starts record under the BMW racing banner? So
yeah, it was Turner's 577th BMW start.
Yeah. So this is a track that, and I think they may have won here the year before that. I'm not 100% certain, but I remember they're always in the mix here. That M4 seems to get around here pretty well. So yeah, BMW is going to be a strong one, especially Turner Motorsports per usual. You also got to look at Windward Racing. We're well over a season now where it seems like Windward Racing is kind of dominating a little bit. I think that's probably safe to say. They're also still leading the championship hunt here in GTD. The GTD championship fight is very close, especially the top four separated by 99 points. But Windward Racing, just they won here last year. You got to expect them to be strong. And Wright Motorsports, they were a team that we saw kind of progressively build up more pace as the season went on last year, that number 120. And they've had a strong start to the season this year as well. So we know that the Porsches have done well here in the past, and I think they'll have something to say before it's all said and done in this race.
Yeah, my fervent Googling has told me that the 97 Turner Motorsport BMW finished second here in 2023. So second on the trot for 2 years in a row.
Did it say the 97?
It does, yeah.
Is this the AI answer?
No.
Oh,
it might be a typo. Is it?
Because it should be the 96.
That's
right?
What I was thinking. No, they had two cars in GTD in 23.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because they had that car that flopped between GTD and GTD Pro.
Yeah, this was
sometimes, and then IMSA was like,
no,
Hill. Stop it. Yeah.
They finished runner-up to the Kelly Moss Riley Porsche here in 2023.
Yes, those Kelly Moss Porsches were very strong. So that's IMSA. That's Laguna Seca. I guess before we sort of wrap up the thought on Laguna Seca, or we'll give our closing thoughts on Laguna Seca, there are some support series as well this weekend. We're going to have a couple of Mustang Challenge races. We have a Michelin Pilot Challenge race as well on Saturday, and we have a couple of Lamborghini Super Trofeo races in addition to the WeatherTech Championship. So plenty of racing going on at Laguna Seca, and it's going to be between that and the WEC. There's going to be plenty of racing on all weekend for us to watch.
Absolutely, yeah, nonstop pretty much. Nonstop weekend going into what is essentially a nonstop month after that, with Indy 500 practice starting up on Tuesday. So hope you're staying productive at work here, folks. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Yeah, I think that's good enough to wrap up the previews for two races there. Of course, we'll be going over both of those in the next show. Did want to jump back over to some questions from earlier on in the episode, though. If you have any questions you want to ask us, get those in the chat. We'll try to get to those before we wrap things up here. Someone saying thoughts on RLL's performance being evaluated over in the GTP class at IMSA. Yeah, we talked about this more in depth in either the last show or the one before. I think it was the last show.
Yeah.
Sort of how much we want to read into this, because this is something that usually is done every single year where BMW will weigh their options on who to partner with over in WeatherTech Championship with that GTP program. I do think RLL needs to convert a race result here.
Yeah.
They're not at a point where they can say the car's not up to it right now. The car has shown race pace, more specifically, shown qualifying strength this season, and they just haven't been able to convert it yet. So I hope that we're not walking out of Laguna Seca saying it's another race that BMW really should have won here, and they threw it away because of X, Y, Z. It would be even more insulting for them if it was stolen again by Porsche. But for now, I think that program, I'm not too worried about it personally right
Yeah.
now. But I definitely think RLL needs to be converting the performance that we've seen out of that car this year, which they so far haven't been able to do.
Yeah, those footsteps are only going to get louder the longer that they go without converting a win. So, well, maybe this is the weekend for them.
Any chances, this is jumping back to WEC here, any chance someone not Ferrari, Toyota, or Porsche wins this weekend at Spa? Yeah, I definitely think so. I went so far as to pick one. Yeah, we both picked a non-Ferrari, Toyota, or Porsche. If you do want to look and read very deep into the BOP tables that came out, there are a lot of manufacturers who haven't picked up a race win who you might look at and say they have an advantage going in. I, again, wouldn't recommend you just look at BOP tables and decide that. But I think Alpine is another one of those manufacturers I expect to be up there this weekend, whether they're able to fight for the lead and therefore race win. I'm not too sure about that yet. We'll have to see what it looks like tomorrow. But I think Alpine is going to be one of those ones that at least is in the running. Talked about Peugeot earlier. Again, I don't think they're necessarily going to have race winning pace, but maybe in the top 5.
Yeah.
And then you and I, of course, like we said, you picked Cadillac. I picked BMW. I think both of them are going to be strong runners here this weekend. So definitely don't think this one's as cutthroat as, say, Imola would have been in terms of who the favorite is in the hypercar class going in.
Yes.
How will the new drivers at Porsche Penske do? I guess that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Particularly for Pascal Wehrlein. Interested to see how he does for his first race with that Porsche Penske program. I do know this one. He raced the JDC car back at Daytona this year.
Yes.
So it won't be his first time in the 963. Got some on-track time earlier this season. We'll have to see how he holds up here. It's a car that he doesn't traditionally drive. It's a pretty big step away from what he's used to, which is that Porsche Formula E car where he's the reigning champion. I can't recall him being anything putting down any significant lap times this year at the 24 Hours of Daytona. I do think he was one of the slower drivers in the race lap times that were published, but I don't know how far you can read into that. It depends what stints he was running, what the strategy was for the car at the time. So first time in a factory car in what will be a much more sprint race setting. Of course, not sprint in the traditional setting, but 1/4 of what he was running at the 24 Hours of Daytona earlier in the year. I think will be a lot more of an indication as to what we can expect to see from him at Le Mans this year. And then Nico Müller, of course, a driver with a lot more prototype racing experience. Shouldn't take him as much time to get up to speed in that 963 this weekend. And yeah, I think he's going to pair up quite well with that lineup in the number 5 car.
I guess on the topic of lineups as well, this is going to be the first weekend that we see the Aston Martin and the Valkyries kind of having to split their I guess attention with IMSA and the WEC going on the same week. Of course, there's lots of manufacturers, lots of teams that are having to do that, but the first time that the Valkyrie will have to contest with that.
Yes, and Darren Turner stepping up over on the IMSA side in the 27 Heart of Racing Aston to fill in for Tom Gamble, who's over doing hypercar duty at Spa.
Good call out there.
Was there any news about the qualifying at Le Mans? As far as I know, nothing has changed for the qualifying at Le Mans. Format remains the same. Same being the changes they made or that they announced earlier this year, where they're making modifications to that hyperpole qualifying format. But as far as I know, there's nothing else that was changed since then.
Yep.
Will either of you be at the Glen this year? I will not. I know you will be, though, assuming I believe you'll be there. And what will that be? Your second time at the Glen?
No, this will be
Oh,
four,
oh okay.
fourth year in a row. Fourth year in a row camping at the bus stop. So if you're kicking around, then drop by. Although it's quite a ways out of the way. We're on the outfield, not on the infield side. So yeah, we'll be kicking around the bus stop though. So we'll be there.
I will.
Just got the tickets in the mail yesterday.
There you go. That is one of my favorite races to go attend. One of my favorite tracks to go attend. I've been there for the IMSA race in 2018 and 2021. Just a fantastic venue to go attend if you have the opportunity to do so. I will not be there this year, unfortunately, as much as I would like to be. I will, during that race, most likely be lying down in a bed in an Airbnb in the middle of the Eiffel forest of Germany, recovering from the 24 hours of the Nürburgring. So I'll try to catch what I can of that race. But it will definitely be a big change of scenery from what I usually am doing during that race.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you're also going to be at a racetrack during that time. Many racetracks.
Yeah. Missed most of the stream, but gotta ask if you guys think any of the announced hypercar entries for 2027 will come to IMSA.
So that would be Ford.
Yeah, Ford. Well, I mean, what are we including Genesis in this? Because Genesis is confirmed for IMSA for 28, so that's a given. Yeah. We're talking like Ford, McLaren.
Ford and McLaren, right?
Yeah, I think the Ford is definitely more likely to show up in IMSA. I'll say that off the bat. Whether that happens in 27, I don't think so. I think that'll likely come a bit later, similar to what Genesis is doing. And then McLaren, I think they're a bit of a coin toss right now. I know there's been interest expressed in McLaren joining IMSA in the past. They were sort of rumored to be doing something similar with that LMDH program, where they maybe do the World Championship first and then IMSA the following year. But I think it's too early to say anything beyond that right now. But I wouldn't expect either of them to be on the grid in IMSA in 2027, personally.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more confident that we'll see McLaren on the grid. I agree that I think we'll almost certainly see Ford on the grid. Probably not in the first year, but as you said, maybe in that second year. And I think McLaren may also lean towards the second year. But I'm fairly confident that we could see McLaren. McLaren has a lot of resources in North America, between, IndyCar program. Zach Brown has the relationship of course, the United LMP2 program that's been contesting. And while that LMP2 program is very closely, I mean, they're essentially operating out of the shop of, I believe it's JR3 Racing. There's a lot of resources here for them to pull from. Maybe not a full season effort for McLaren, but focus on the Endurance Cup or something like that. I think we could reasonably see something like that in year 2.
I'll tell you one of the pretty wild speculative stories I heard a while back at this point is that McLaren's IndyCar program would be closing up shop entirely and moving fully over to a sports car racing base in the U.S., presuming that would be for IMSA. Now, I don't think that's likely. It is something I had heard in the past, though.
That would be interesting. That would be a shocker to a few racing series.
Yeah. Although I think it's worth noting that I believe Zach Brown told the AP that he personally has no plans on leaving the IndyCar series anytime soon. So
Yeah.
worth noting that. And they just did
Yep.
buy out recently. They bought out the full stake of that team from
True.
Schmidt Peterson as well.
That's true.
So, were you going to add something on there?
No, I was not. I was just gonna say, I think that was our final. I guess Sam has one more. And while we're not talking, it's not time for the Glen yet. But what's your favorite area to watch the race from? Maybe we can each name one.
Yeah, that's fine. You want to take it off first?
Sure. I think. I personally love watching it from the bus stop, but that's because where our site is, so it's pretty easy.
Inside or out? It would be outside for camping, right?
Yeah, well, we are on the outside, but there are campsites on the inside as well.
Okay.
But you can view from the inside or the outside. Like there are usually some open spots on the outfield side, but I would say, besides the bus stop, I love sitting in the grandstands coming up the Esses. Getting to see the cars tackle it is a high speed corner. Seeing the GTP cars navigate around the GT class cars there is pretty neat to see. So maybe there's the grandstand just on the infield side of the S's is a great spot to watch from. And you're really close to the infield as well. If you want to make your way into the pits, it's easy to hop around the track from there.
Yeah. I could talk for a while about some of my favorite spots at the Glen, which I'll save for another day. But just to give you a couple, I really love standing at the base of the hill, actually, the uphill, which would be turn 2.
Yep.
It sort of feels akin to, while we're on the topic of Spa, sort of like US's Eau Rouge Radillon complex.
Yeah.
Not quite as significant, but you get the same vibe when you're standing at the base there. You don't really see quite as much on TV. I also really like the boot. It's definitely a lot less built up over there. There's not really any concessions or anything on that front over there, but it's very old school. You're pretty close up to the cars, and it's a lot quieter over there in terms of how many people are standing around over there usually. So always make an effort to get over there. And then personally, I always try to watch the finish, at least of the WeatherTech race, maybe the final 45 minutes to an hour, up on the very top row of the front straightaway, the main straightaway grandstands. Not one if you're afraid of heights, but you get pretty much an unparalleled view up there. You can see all the way from the exit of the boot up through the uphill, approaching towards the bus stop. In terms of just what you're able to see out of your own two eyes, it doesn't get a whole lot better than that. So I always usually try to get up over there for the race finish.
Yeah, that's a great spot to watch as well.
And I think we can call it a show there now.
Again,
yeah, we're pretty much at our usual time slot for this one. Again, we'll always be there. But we'll be back next week to recap everything we have seen from a lot of racing action this week. And then, like I said, things probably will be getting a bit quieter for the next couple of weeks. I'll be jumping into Indy 500 mode. Won't be going there this year, unfortunately. But we'll be trying to consume what I can of it. And then, of course, next month is the big show. So we'll be ramping up things over here. We'll be trying to get a bit creative onto when we want to actually do those shows while I'm across the pond. Probably going to bump the time up a little bit to help me out over there. But we'll discuss all of that in a future episode. For now, wanted to thank you if you tuned in tonight or if you tuned in on a podcasting platform. Hope to see you all next week. Take care.